God, do I look good? Do I present that image for the inquiry in terms of my role based on a society that looks at physical I titled this expression as mental inquiry because I think that's what society that is mentally disturbed decides to do, to query everything. What inspired this video is a family member and I'll just say my sister and I were talking about, we're having a conversation just generally. I have relayed my story and I won't get into it too much because this is a general discussion about a community and I believe a universal understanding in terms of the Earth's scope, that you have to be on par. If you're not on par, at a gathering or at a certain moment, then you're mental. Or you're not that. You're not it. This understanding is brought about by various circumstances as if you look into it. It's insecurity and fear. That's the base. So or I'll say you tend to observe this in a lot of associations or gatherings or connections or relationships. It's a competition, huh? even just a friendship, whether it is just a long-term friendship or whether it is that initial connection with someone. There's who appears, and it is conscious or unconscious. What my sister and I were talking about is to do with connecting to a group, really, and depending on your previous disposition, whether life brought you various issues to put a label on yourself, according to maybe yourself as well, but according to those who may have close relations with you, or the label is your skin color, or your accent, or the way you dance, the way you flow, your rhythm, your vibration. There are many influences in terms of what it is I am highlighting here to a connection. Now, this is not to say that every individual in the universe or every being in the universe judges someone based on their disposition or their being, their space in being. Now, that's heavy in terms of understanding it, because I also speak in a language as an expressionist that I relate to, and I've had a various or a diverse life experience that marries different expressions or experiences to therefore influence my expression. But the bottom line is, in a gathering or in a connection, I feel there is a vibration that it has to be a competition. And if you're not, as I mentioned at the beginning, oh my God, it's my hair, can I just pronounce this word the way that is the norm, or the way that is it? Can I speak the way that it is it? Can I perform in a party like to seem as if I am it? I'm on the ball. It is a huge strain on a human being. We discussed the issues that are underlying already that a human being has to deal with. Then on top of that, there is also the judgments, the unconscious or sometimes conscious effort of a group or even an individual to really, how I'd put it, to put the word starts with S, and I don't use derogatory words, so I won't say it, their stuff onto you. My sister and I discussed the subject of mental illness, discrimination as well. I've highlighted some of those issues in a video recently. But I will summarize what it is that we discussed and the anguish a human being can go through, that at times the perpetrator understands that the human being is going through, but to the perpetrator's mind, they feel good because they're par with it. They're with the climate at that time, with a feel. So if you're not going to come on board, then you're odd. I'll relay an experience to help you focus on the issues that I'm highlighting here. I'm an African Australian who has lived in Australia for nearly 30 years. And I've learned the culture, I've integrated, I have contributed heavily as well to the culture, and positively. In terms of my understanding of the culture, I have done my best to integrate. But from the beginning, when it is I came into this country, I understood straight away that there was a rift between the blacks and the whites. And I couldn't get it. Even now, I don't get it. We are human beings. This video is not so much about color or per se discrimination, but it is about a human being if you look into what it is I'm saying. How I dealt with a lot of these issues was to put myself in the shoes of a human being, not Joyce as color or as a function, in order to really see it or I made an inquiry into the understanding of separation, judgment, labeling. And I had to make that inquiry because I felt that, hang on, I've come to this country And the simple, I don't know, to some groups of people, the way I speak, some groups of people say I'm articulate. Some say, "Oh, pardon? Can you repeat that?" And I got that in a few different scenarios in my experience in this country. And when I say in this country, I'm not only talking about white people. I'm talking about other races as well, because you tend to go with the flow. So if you're not flowing in terms of accentuating, pronouncing, adhering, then maybe sometimes people, and this is not all or everyone, certain individuals may think you're not clear, you're not you're not part of it. I'll give you an example. As I said, I used to have friends, I still have friends, and this is not a gun to put towards an Anglo-Australian culture, but in terms of my experience, I have to be honest. Honesty for me is the best for me in terms of my living experience. By the way, I've also experienced that in other races. But in terms of my what it is I am expressing here is a scenario that reiterated itself a lot of times. And by the way, don't even think that I don't have my own understanding in terms of my responsibility and my input or my take on what has influenced me previously to bring me to that point. But the point I'm making here in this expression is clear in terms of there is a cultural emphasis that Anglo-white is better. You see that in the media. You see that in terms of an experience, and I have experienced it in terms of the organizations that are legitimate organizations that have failed to see me as a human being but judge me in terms of color and my cultural expression, my cultural being, in terms of the connection to what it is the relationship was. I will now open up to the experience. I used to go out with a few friends, and it was in a predominantly white Anglo-Australian group, whether we were celebrating birthdays, whether we were going out for the casual after-work drinks, or whether we were just connecting on an individual level. It was heightened in terms of what it is relaying, the issues of labeling and making an inquiry. Are you like us? Do you sound like us? Okay. If you don't sound like us, let me query you even more. And this is not all, by the way, all individuals in this gathering, but it is a cultural and general feel in a gathering which has been accepted because no one is querying it. And which is why I bring up responsibility in our community. There's the responsibility that if it is that such a behavior is being encouraged or is taking place, the silence or someone walking away when such issues are disregarding a human being, and disregarding a human being's ability to be who they are uniquely, then there's a problem in our community. Back to the experience. So my sister and I were talking about the challenges that normally are faced in terms of what it is I've highlighted, the labeling, the inquiry, as in, are you meeting the power or the group consciousness? But under it all, as I said, there are underlying life issues that every human being is going through. You may suffer from a mental illness. You may have lost your job. You may you may be having family problems. You may be stressing out about a particular life situation that you don't need to highlight or discuss at that moment, but already you're trying to stay afloat. Then there's this barrage of inquiries focused on you. So my sister and I were discussing how it is the mind can really grasp the conversation at that time in order to be with the power. Maybe you can be with the power if it is that the underlying issues are, and the human being who is blowing them through to you recognizes that you are a human being and you are like them, going through life where life throws in different circumstances, different experiences, and we all move accordingly to our rhythms and don't need queries or inquiries. And yes, you may come back to me and say, why did you make the inquiry? I made the inquiry in order for us all to release the inquiries, if that's an understanding that you can relate to. For me to be silent, like a witness who is silent, I believe acceptance in terms of how I perceive now let's put it this way, because I'm learning as I do express as well. My inquiry is to speed up the process because I have suffered greatly because of it. I do trust though as well that these issues are a healing process in life. But my anticipation and inquiry is, it has been reiterated over centuries what it is I am talking about. So when do we wake up as a human race to stop judging and labeling, and acceptance is opened? I do believe also in life that inquiries are made as a process of evolution or even creation. So instead of hanging on to querying, I open up the expression that why torment an individual just because they're not in power? Earlier on today, I met with an associate and we were talking about we were talking about scheduling various events in order to support the mentally ill. that have been absolutely stigmatized in our society because they don't appear, they don't have the rhythm, the vibration in terms of a society that looks at or has a great emphasis on the physical. We were talking about this and the underlying issues and what it is that I observed and I have expressed this many times, even in a Facebook blog earlier on in 2017 to 2018, before I went through a court process that tried to stifle or impede my expression, which is a free expression, and every human being, I believe, has that right to have a free input into this universe, understanding that there are other individuals or other beings that are dependent on the network to exist. But having said that, it is imperative that an individual's input does have impact in the whole. So I discussed issues about mental illness and what I believed that mental illness, I'm not a doctor, but in society here, not only in Australia, in the world, we put a lot of emphasis on medical practitioners. I do respect that they have training and skills, but I also believe in the human ability to heal. And if a medical practitioner cannot understand that, then they are not able to understand that the process of healing is in itself not under the control of the particular person, the medical practitioner, because there are influences. Even when you look at the study of it, medicine, the root of medicine, how it began by testing, or even in early time, man, I'm ill, maybe I'll have this herb, or intuitively. There is a divine intelligence in life that will open you up to your experience. Medical doctors have that. We all do in our universe. But I do appreciate that there is training that is specialized and focused on that particular understanding or that particular study. Whether it is healing as a medical doctor in terms of mainstream, or whether an alternative therapist also has that. In our societies generally, I will focus on Australia. I haven't lived in other countries in order to make the generalization. But in Australia, there is an emphasis on only mainstream medicine. Yet alternative therapy also has specialized in the form of healing. The connection to healing a human being. And this comes from experience, yes. It comes from training, of course. But it comes from the connection between the practitioner and the patient. That's where I believe you can heal at the optimum level. In your connection to both, and actually holistically. But in terms of what we were discussing, not only my associate that I was talking about today, in terms of looking at creating a space whereby various issues in terms of mental health awareness are opened up, really. Because for me, where it is I come from, I can't talk for my associate. Where it is I come from is, I'm not saying this should be the way, this should be the way, but I am saying that a human being needs to be given that they are able to be unique and must be treated as that. Whether you're ill or whether you are normal. When we're looking at mental illness, I was talking to my associate, we point generally in a society that is engraved on labeling and competition, emphasizing perfectionness. So it is a move to perfection. So you're moving out of yourself to perfection. Yet I am enough. So in terms of looking at mental illness, the labeling, okay, if we even look at the general characteristics or symptoms that they describe mental ill people to exhibit. Oh, you're forgetful, you're delusional. So delusional means you're not grounded in terms of reality. What is reality? That's my question to the world audience. What is reality? Is reality the functionality in society? Question also that, I question. And I'm not saying, oh God, I'm against the society that is adhering to being a functioning society, because there are various systems in place in order to facilitate a formity. You form into it. A acceptance. So you go along with those systems. I'm not against a society that adheres to the individual expression, and there is a overall riding consciousness that understands that each individual has a uniqueness and an impact to its cultural, I was going to say base, but cultural rules, ethics. They're very, very standard rules, ethics. And in Australia, our constitution specifies clearly not to discriminate. I adhere to that. But in terms of functionality, I have observed a different move, which is why I'm bringing it, based on my experience. So when we're looking at mental illness, so what I was saying to point, I was discussing this with my associate. I'm saying you're pointing, and I think certain philosophers in our age have said, point one finger and the three fingers are pointing back and one is pointing up. Okay, you're making a heavy judgment onto everything. That understanding, I feel, impedes the acceptance or the release of the restriction in yourself that you should conform or control. You should conform, and when I say conform, adhere, but release your own essence in doing so. Conformity, I believe, can be an open ground. But if you do release your essence, then what's the point? Therefore, I believe a system needs to accept that there is a understanding not to discriminate, to accept unique input in terms of looking at our ethics and regulations that influence a way of living in a society. I believe in such a society. And it's not only I believe, it is love. I've talked about this in my publications previously. We discussed this with my associate. And looking at love, I at times tend to observe that some people look at love as, oh, the new age thing. Oh, love. Yes, love is airy. Ooh. Oh, peace be with you. Airy. Oh, it's spiritual. Oh, God, I can't relate to that. It is intelligence. It is the understanding that I am not here alone. There are others as part of this network or our universe. So, of course, if I'm going to act a certain way, it has consequences to the whole. Therefore, I am responsible, or I have to take responsibility as well for what it is I input into the general vibration. But at the same time, understanding that my input is also important. So I'm not going to gag myself because there's a society that is saying that maybe I'm an individual that isn't quite the par. I will lift myself and I will input. Whether I am, as my experience lately, whether I am being absolutely disregarded as a human being, whether I am being taunted, whether I am being discarded as waste, I will stand up. Whether you visualize that as aggression, I will stand up. Because I am important enough to contribute to life as everyone else is, or other beings as well. I'm not only talking about human beings. Going back to what I'm saying about a mental illness, the issue has come up because of various experiences, whether they are individual or whether they are in connection to a society. I have had the experience of doing social work, whereby I have supported or worked with what is described as people suffering from intellectual or mental disabilities, also physical disabilities. And in terms of my understanding, I believe that I am able to express an opinion based on my experience. I've also been going through a court process whereby evidence hasn't been looked at. I've been alleged to be mentally suffering from a mental disability, which has allowed various inhumane decisions to take place, which is why I'm pressing on it now. And also why I am emphasizing that just because you're a medical practitioner, it doesn't mean that you are able to understand the healing process better than an individual going through a life issue or an alternative therapist or any other human being. The emphasis here is that I was apparently alleged to be suffering from schizophrenia. If anyone looks this up in any medical dictionary or even talks to a doctor, which my medical practitioners have confirmed and tried to refute the allegations, but then they haven't been submitted or accepted in a court system that is discriminative. The allegation has been made by also not a medical practitioner. We're talking about issues in our society, and please bear with me here when it is an individual human's expression. My life experience waves in, and also there's the understanding of society as well in relation to the issues, and it is an evolving experience or expression as well as I'm learning. And I believe my audience will be also learning or sharing, and I'm sharing as well. But a society or a community in our world today that is engraved on perfectionness, labeling, control, that is in itself, I believe, fitting the category of mental illness. It's delusional to the natural being of a human being or being itself, making certain decisions in order for our environment, and us included, to suffer. Yet we have a huge financial base and resources in order for a community to thrive. And when I say thrive, to adhere to the needs of its individuals. The basic needs we're talking about in Australia, when this is a first world country, but yet we still have people who are homeless, who have nothing to eat, who are displaced, disregarded because of a certain understanding that maybe, and this is not everyone, I'm talking general, maybe you are not the power. So therefore, I don't know, we'll channel the resources to those who are already in a position of influence, and they're few, by the way, of influence, and just elevate them in order to repeat a certain pattern that is what it is that is accepted. Now, I'm not talking about the rich versus the poor, although the rich can influence considerably what happens in a community if the community is engraved on money or certain understandings that adhere to the living of the rich. But even those who are categorized as the lower income group will have the same impact or can impact society in the same way, with the understanding maybe that, the rich are just in a different space. They pointing. Rich or the rich also, or pointing. Middle class or pointing. Generally, the pointing is an impeding, let me say this word properly, impeding process. Impeding, and when I say impeding, I'm rolling backwards. Usually impeding is like it stops you, but you actually go backwards in terms of not holding your position or your space as a human being. Various influences may appear as if they are moving you forward in terms of maybe innovation, and I'm not against innovation, believe me. Whether innovation enhances life is the question. And when you say enhance, what it is that you're looking at has to be somewhat opened up in terms of our society. What kind of society do we want? Is moving forward, oh, let's go to the moon, for example. And I'm not against going to the moon for, I'm not a scientist, but my natural sense is the answers are on Earth. First of all, the answers are in an individual. I've got the tools to live this life. So now, let's go to the moon. There have been a few shuttles that have crashed, but it's not about crashing. If it is that we are going to the moon, or if it is that we are making innovations in our society, honesty is important, isn't it? We receive news that I believe is filtered. And why do I believe this? Is because of, I believe, the fatigue or the tiring what am I trying to say here? I'm getting very tired, and everyone here on Earth has different. They've got different choices in life, interests. So some people do focus on TV and social media to a certain extent. I'm tiring of some of the media coverage because it is a reiteration of a certain understanding which I cannot keep relating to, because there is so much uniqueness and input in our society not being represented by the media. And this is not everything, but generally, I'm tiring of it. It is, I believe, also the media has a huge influence, which is why I began also opening up an expression, and I encourage that we have tools, social media, that has opened up an expression for an individual that can penetrate into the whole or the underlying influence in our society. But the issues that frustrated me in the Australian community, I connected to when I first came here. And I remember I lived in Brisbane, and I observed that the indigenous people of this country were not on the same stage or level as the Anglo-Australians, Anglo-white Australians. That's an issue. And I left it there at that time, and I continued. I went to school here, and in fact, it was reiterated in my experience and with the people, and this is both white and black, and other races, by the way. This is not only just white and black. There are other races that have expressed this. So it is the leveling of a society, and that leveling does not encourage uniqueness and acceptance. which is why I've made a big deal out of it. In my previous video, I said there's not too much I have to say about discrimination, but if you don't accept yourself, then you made your choice. This expression here in this video is a life experience, and I'm expressing it, and I'm saying that this pressure of, it's not only discrimination, of being par or being it, is, I believe, going to contribute to our world economy. It's already, I believe, in terms of the understanding, I believe already the world economy, and you might disagree with me or not, we are facing mental illness in our systems. So I believe this is reflective in the individuals as well, whereby decisions are made without the connection. So we are moving forward without the connection to the human being. It's like a machine has taken over, and actually, as human beings, if you want to see it in an energetic, visual understanding or analogy, the energy of a human being is here, but we are moving forward without labeling so much, and it has become computerized so much. And I'm not saying computers are bad. This is just in terms of our mechanisms in how we are concentrating on absolutely pummeling the human being into a certain consciousness in order to, in the understanding, move forward. So there's the general focus and pressure to move forward. So therefore, how it is visually, I see it, is that the mechanisms and the processes and the outcomes have moved forward. And wow, at that point, wherever it is, oh, wow, it looks great that human beings have become robots there. Where's the human being there? Oh, hang on. The human being is still here. I'm here. That you've pummeled me with, I just cannot meet. I'm here. I can act the part in terms of various energies. I don't even believe it's possible. But in terms of our reflectors of the experience, so our reflectors are, maybe it's written on the media that now we're progressing. Okay, we've gone there, but as a human being, I'm here. So therefore, it's not so much about just one issue or subject or topic I've covered here. It's about generally, once again, acceptance. But not only that, I have to press on today. It's not only acceptance. It is the question. The systems in place in a society must adhere to the human or an environmental influence. If they don't, then the systems are not reflective of it. In my experience, I have lost too much because of the labeling without proof even. But even if there was proof, let's hang on to that. You're mentally ill, so you're not allowed to have this. You don't fit the past, so let's query you. I mean, you're in a gathering, you're in connecting to people. There's the persecution of the energies put towards you in terms of inquiry. Oh, but you're not quite. So the pressure. So even if there's that inquiry, and believe me, I also understand a human being. It's the inquiry of, oh, who am I? Or I understand the human function. But if it is deliberately reflected towards you, or what's the word? If it's deliberately being steered in your direction to make the person feel like they are even more power with it, I believe that is criminal in itself. As I was saying, for a human being or even other living beings to be deprived of something because there is a label that say you don't fit a certain type of function, whether it's true or not, you have a right to be here. And despite the fight, despite the influence, despite the opposition, I'll say you have no right to question me here. I walk here. And I have the right to be here just like you. I'm going to leave it there. It has been quite heavy, and I appreciate your patience with me as well, because as I've said before, I don't believe they're mistakes, really. We evolve. I also don't believe that one being or one person is it. I believe it is a sharing experience. I believe that uniqueness is important and unique input is important in order for a community to function at its optimum. Thank you. I'm Joyce Okello from Inner Tuition Life.
stared at you, finding myself falling down upon the ground. I'm finding myself so full of love for you. In an instant, I've arrived to that place where you can't touch me, can't be the one who erase all the innocence in my I'm thinking of the different ways, finding myself falling down upon the ground. I'm finding myself so full of love. Soothe me with the only kiss you gave me in my head. We never touch, but the thought of you just kills me with one breath. I'm reaching something. I'm reaching something. Finding myself falling down upon the ground. I'm finding myself so full of love, finding myself falling down upon the ground. I'm finding myself so full of love. I'm reaching something. 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 I'm reaching